welcome back to Vinyl Friday. Actually, also, welcome to 2024. This is the first proper Vinyl Friday of the year. I'm excited to be here. I hope you are as well. We're going to start off the year listening to one of my favorite albums of all time. It was released in 1993, and it peaked at number 164 on the Billboard 200 chart, which is to say, it tanked. Normally, at this stage in the episode, I would reel off some impressive statistics about the band, but I won't in this case because there are none. Today's album is by a band that does have an adoring cult following, but ultimately they couldn't make it. They didn't sell enough records, and they unceremoniously broke up shortly after the release of this album. Very, very shortly after in geological time. Hello, Anchor Nancy from the future here. If you're seeing this, it's because Anchor Nancy from the past forgot to say this out loud. But the band is Jellyfish, the album is Spilt Milk, and it sounds like this. I first conceived of a Vinyl Friday style show when I was listening to this album years ago. It's an album that is dripping in detail. It's just pure ear candy. And as I was listening, I thought, God, there are so many details on this album, in this song, that I would just love to point out to people. People need to hear this, and there are people out there who may not necessarily notice these things. But I haven't been able to feature it on the show so far, because as it was released in 1993, there were very few vinyl pressings that were released originally. Generally speaking, there weren't as many vinyl releases, but in this case, it was such a small band, the actual release was even more limited. And last time I looked on the second-hand market, one of those original pressings was going to run me in excess of 600 New Zealand dollars, which incidentally is the currency I use here in New Zealand. I'm not just arbitrarily using New Zealand currency to buy my records on the second-hand market. So I had basically resigned myself to never owning this album on vinyl. However, a couple of years ago, there was an extremely limited release of a new pressing of the album on 180-gram vinyl. Unfortunately, it sold out almost instantly, and I found out about it the day after it sold out. And it broke my damn heart because the album was going for like $30 a pop. So I resigned myself to never owning this album on vinyl. However, my little sister found a copy of the repress on the second-hand market, and she gave it to me for Christmas, which is why we are featuring it today here on the channel. Yay! So let's get you up to speed. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this band, and then we can break down some of the songs, and it's going to be a really good time. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Although, just secretly, this is my second time doing this because my microphone appears to have been irreparably damaged during a spot of international transit, so I'm using a different setup, and I forgot to hit record on that different setup. But it's okay, I love this album so much, I am still pumped. Let's go. Here's a little bit about Jellyfish. Jellyfish is a band that was formed in 1989 after two young men met in high school and fell in love, platonically speaking, bonding over a mutual adoration of jazz and, I don't know, whatever music these teenage boys were into. They had it in common, and they bonded. Their names are Andy Sturmer and Roger Manning Jr. They put out an album called Belly Button in the very, very early 90s. They toured it for a year, which is a very long time to play the same handful of songs almost every night of the week. Following that tour, half the band picked up and walked off. The bassist, Chris Manning, left to enjoy a more sedate life as either a chef or a producer. The internet is unclear on this detail. The other member, lead guitarist Jason Faulkner, was a little more contentious in his departure. He claims that he only joined the band because the other two promised him that he would be one of the principal songwriters, and that didn't pan out. However, I'm inclined to side with the band on this one because he was sort of a dramatic crybaby about it in interviews.
It's great, but it's not right for this band. That's literally all they said in response to my songs. It was personal. They wanted to shield their little songwriting thing.
And like, feel your feelings, Jason, but be professional about it. Also, the other two members went on to produce this, which is amazing, and Jason Faulkner went on to do a solo album, which is good. And then an album with a band he formed called The Grays, also good. Is there something you can do, my love? Won't you help? Good, exceptionally good. So maybe they were right. Anyway, in between the two albums, Roger and Andy were invited to collaborate with none other than Mr. Richard Starkey.
Peace and love, peace and love.
Ringo Starr. Say it with me, kids. Will it, Beatles? Yes, it will! And those sessions resulted in a song called I Don't Believe You. Andy and Roger are also in the music video for, what's the name of that song? Weight of the World.
Maybe your daddy never held you like he should.
That's all very cool. They were also invited to collaborate with Brian Wilson.
Brian Douglas Wilson, that's me.
Yes, that Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. Those sessions were ultimately sort of fruitless in a sense, in that they didn't produce any songs with Brian that they used. However, Andy and Roger were inspired to produce, in their words, a masterpiece following these collaborations. And the album that they went on to make, this one here, has Brian Wilson's fingerprints all over it. You'll see what I mean very shortly. Now, as they had recently lost the bassist and lead guitarist, Andy and Roger went into the project, this new project, almost as more of a Steely Dan-style duo with session musicians than as a band. For the first 6 months of the project, Roger went to Andy's house and they spent 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, just writing, demoing. Following that, they went into the studio and they worked their asses off. They were working into the wee hours of the morning. And they had a whole host of session musicians coming in, because this is an album that features choirs and string sections and brass sections and a harpsichord and banjo. And the Wikipedia entry also lists chimes, which I don't really think they needed a session musician for, but you do you, guys. You do you. Predictably, the album not only went over schedule, but also over budget. And between that and the massive interpersonal dramas surrounding the making of this project, they decided to name it Spilt Milk. In the words of Andy Sturmer in 1993, I quote, "We thought it sounded good, but it also took too long and cost too much. But we couldn't cry over spilt milk." Hence the title. The album cover was made by the same dude who did Breakfast in America by Supertramp. And it features a studio, a curtain being pulled back, and I mean this with all due respect, a very creepy little girl in a tutu and a crown. I don't know. I find it unsettling. The artist's name was Mick Haggerty, and he had this to say about it. "I can't remember where the little girl came in, but I do remember the casting call from hell. We tried everything to make her cry, but in the end used glycerin for her tears, although I know mine were real." But we're not here to look at the cover. We're here to listen to the music. And I may have to come back and do that later. It'll be later for me, but not for you. In fact, it'll be now for you. Here we go. And I'm back. Let's dig into this breakdown. Despite the melodrama of the making of this album, I think that they accomplished their mission, their intended goal, and they produced an indisputable masterpiece. All of the songs on this album, in my humble opinion, are strong. And although the band resented comparisons to Queen and to the Beach Boys, they're kind of unavoidable. Having said that, though, I wouldn't say that this music is at all derivative. It sounds very unique and novel. They did a great job on this one. It is an album that is enormously diverse and abundantly creative. There's a variety of textures on this album. It's like track to track they were trying on different genres. We've got glam rock, chamber pop, pastoral folk,
Parked under the sunshine,
cabaret, noise rock. There's even an ode to onanism, which I'm gonna let you look up in your own time. And all of these disparate songs are sort of brought together and glued by these common threads of intriguing production and arrangement choices and really skillful musicianship and songwriting. Altogether, it is a technicolor spectacle, and we're going to dig into it right now. We'll start with the production. Spilt Milk is an album that is full of surprises, like treats, like gifts from the artists. Part of the reason for this is they have made exquisite sequencing choices in the design of this album. It creates this splendid contrast. So you'll never have two quiet songs right next to each other or a string of rock ballads. It's like a variety show. And by that I literally mean variety. For instance, here's how side A opens. Here's how side B opens. Quite a contrast, right? But those songs aren't right next to each other, and you do find that between adjacent songs on the recording. The best example I can think of here is the opening track leading into the second track, and that I think is where we'll hang out for most of the rest of this episode. So track 1 is called Hush. I've just played you a little section of it. The following track is called Joining a Fan Club. Hush is like a prologue for the album. It's a lullaby. It's like a welcoming to the dreamscape, if you will. And it's a great title because the lyrics are like a hush-a-bye baby kind of a feel, but it is also hushed. It is gentle. It has these beautiful harmonies.
Set all your eyes to make them come true.
You can hear the Beach Boys, right? Sorry, guys. Where there is instrumentation, it is orchestrated, and there's this Celeste, which sounds like this. It's the Harry Potter theme song instrument. It's so quiet, like it's literally quieter than everything else on the album, which encourages you to lean in and listen very carefully. And here's how they reward you for your efforts. What? It's like a jump scare. This is what I mean by contrast, right? The quietest of quiet to boom! Loud, aggressive guitars. Joining a Fan Club is a song that is structurally very intricate. It's like a showcase. It's like an elevator pitch for the album itself. It has all of these moving parts and distinct sections. It's amazing. After that aggressive introduction, you would expect the song to continue in that vein, but it doesn't. It abruptly shifts gears into a piano part. And now I'm gonna draw my comparisons to Queen. That to me sounds a lot like the middle section of Bohemian Rhapsody. Sue me, Jellyfish, but actually please don't. You all know I'm a chord girly, and I love the chords in this verse. We're gonna cross now to the piano correspondent, who's going to tell us a little more about said chords. Over to you, my friend.
Hello, Vinyl Friday fam. I'm so excited to be kicking off Vinyl Friday 2025 with a song that has such great chords. So here are the chords in the verse. Pretty good, huh?
And you know what? We're just gonna go straight to the chorus, because the chorus has great chords too.
Not too shabby.
So as listeners, we're on board. We understand how this song works. We've got our verses, we've got our choruses. We go in for verse 2, chorus 2. We're used to this. We understand what we're listening to. But then... a stinky guitar riff in the middle of the song, yes please, changes the feel entirely. It slows things down. It makes things dirty, filthy even. I'm going to interrupt myself a little bit to point out this beautiful little Easter egg in this section of the song. The line is, stand by. Shake that woody for me, Saint Pinocchio. And when they sing the word Pinocchio, we get this in the background. When You Wish Upon a Star, which is the theme song from the original 1940s Disney feature-length film. Nice little Easter egg for us. It reminds me of the end section of All You Need Is Love, where they have all of those clips of other songs, but we're not here to talk about the Beatles today. Only tangentially. Just as you're getting your head around this entirely new section of song, they kick it into a higher gear and make it double time. Double time, rock and roll. Hell yeah. This whole section is like a roller coaster. This whole song is like a roller coaster. And if that's not enough, there's a key change at the end. There's a great drum fill there, but we're not going to get into that yet because we're not up to the drum part of this episode. I just want you to know that I'm not neglecting my duties here. I will come back to that riff. And then to close out the song, we revisit that riff that happens in the middle of the song, like this. And then it stops. We don't complete the riff, it just stops there. So you're jolted into the song, you're jolted right back out of the song. And predictably, the next song is much quieter, much more delicate, until it's not. And so, you know what? Just go listen to it. It's worth your time, I believe. Would I lead you astray? Not intentionally. Now I'd like to get onto what the individual instruments are doing. We'll start with the vocals. Andy Sturmer is the lead singer in this band, and I think his voice is a little bit divisive. Some people find it to be kind of grating or irritating. What you cannot deny is that he is singing his absolute ass off. In fact, while they were recording this album on one particular night, he actually passed out in the middle of his vocal take and woke up in the room next door. That is to say, he was rescued and transported by the people around him. Not that he can teleport by fainting, but how cool would that be? What I would love to point out, though, is the harmonies on this album. They're just so intricate. They're like barbershop. In an interview that I watched, Roger Manning cited the Four Freshmen as inspiration for them.
Somehow I feel the jungle heat.
Which, of course, was the band that inspired the Beach Boys. So in a way, the Four Freshmen are almost more influential than the Beach Boys, right? If they influenced the... Never mind. Here are some of my favorite harmony moments in the song. It's pretty good. I also like this bit. Isn't that top note is heavenly. Beautiful triplets there. Ba 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 ba. The harmonies sound that dense because they aren't only singing the three notes that make up the chord that they're singing the extra juicy good ones outside of that define the feel of that chord. That's what makes it sound like a barbershop quartet as opposed to Crosby, Stills, and Nash, who are three voices, so they just sing the chord, typically. I in no way mean to disparage Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They are masters of harmony. And if you'd like to watch any episodes about them, I think you can find them here. Andy Sturmer, who was the front man of the band, was also the drummer of the band. And when he played live, he played on a stand-up kit, which is interesting and unusual for my brain. But I'm almost certain that he was not playing the stand-up kit for this recording, because the drums on this track, on this album, are monstrous, thunderous, beastly things. And he really takes advantage of that. Here are some of my favorite drum moments on this track. What a great way to kick into a chorus. Sneaky fill there. Also, he's very heavy on cymbals. I really appreciate that there's this very sparkly layer of sound in the frequency spectrum with just this wall of cymbals. In this next section, he's just going ham on the ride, and I love that. I have a real soft spot for that. Okay, and then there's this last fill leading into the key change. this cluster of drum cacophony. I love it. Subtle, quiet drumming has its place. This song is not that place. So I really appreciate that the engineers and the producers, Andy and Roger, who were also producers, really took advantage of that huge sound. Went, make it bigger! Make it bigger. Stunning. Stunning work. All of this has been incredibly enjoyable, so I'm not going to rank my favorites, but we are up to the bass, and my heart does love a good bass line. So here are some of my favorite bass moments on this track. Bass correspondent!
Thank you very much, Anchor. Hello, Vinyl Friday viewers. It's your bass correspondent here, and it is my pleasure to be able to share with you some of my favorite bass moments in this song. The first we'll find during the second verse, and that sounds like this. The second we'll find just before the close of the song, and that sounds like this.
Excellent work, fellas. I sort of think of the first and second songs as one unit because one so dramatically blends into the other. And it's a great way to open an album. They're just letting it all hang out. They're throwing all caution to the wind. They're shooting their shot. I'm about out of idioms now. It's a good song. Have a listen to it. So to close out, I'd like to pose the question, why didn't it work? What went wrong? With such a great album, you'd think it would be a smash. But it was quite the opposite. After the tour, Andy found that he was uncomfortable being the person who was pulling the strings, and he wanted Roger to step up more. He also realized that he wasn't comfortable being a frontman, which, if I'm being honest, you can kind of see in live performances.
This is a song about joining fan clubs.
He doesn't look like he's phoning it in, but he also doesn't look like he's having the time of his life on stage. And it's a real pity. There are a lot of comparisons that are drawn between this band and XTC, another band that I love. I don't think they necessarily sound similar, but I suppose that is something that they do have in common, in that both were bands that really excelled in the studio more than on the stage. After the tour, those two principal songwriters also found that they were drifting apart musically. Their tastes were changing. From what I can surmise online, when they started writing together, Roger was just about brought to tears because Andy had presented him with something that was kind of like a country song, and it was the farthest thing from what he wanted to be doing musically at the time. Roger calls up Andy one day and says, I think it's over, and Andy says, I've been thinking the same thing. And then they basically have never spoken since. Maybe there was an email here or a phone call there, but for all intents and purposes, they stopped talking to each other. They just had nothing to do with each other ever again. So while I'm incredibly sad that this band didn't work out, I'm also exceptionally grateful that we got this before they lost the ability to make music with each other. I think the general consensus seems to be that what went wrong is that the album came out in 1993, a period in which there was a sort of genre war happening and grunge was strong-arming this hyper-produced, over-teased hair metal off the charts.
Belly Button comes out at the height of hair metal.
Yeah.
Nirvana Nevermind changes the whole landscape. And then our second album comes out at the height of grunge.
There was really no room for this very quirky power pop outfit. I mean, here, have a montage of what rock music sounded like in 1993. forgotten, largely. I mean, as I said, this album, this band has a very enthusiastic cult following. I count myself among them. And actually, one of the first covers I ever put up on YouTube was track 3 of this album. That's, in a way, what got me into all of this. So we have Jellyfish, in a way, to thank for my entire YouTube channel. Thanks, Jellyfish! And that's it from me. If you enjoyed this episode, or you would like to support any of the weird things I do, I will leave a link in the description for my Buy Me a Coffee page, where you are most welcome to make a donation, if you wish. No pressure, friends. Thank you very, very much to everybody who has made a donation or signed up as a member. I really appreciate you, and you keep this whole outfit going, so thank you for directly sponsoring this episode. If you're curious about what any of my original music sounds like, I will leave a link in the description to that as well. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week. Have a great weekend! Spilt milk is now... Now I would like to talk about the individual instrument. That's not a word. Come back, son. Come back. Don't let the sun go down on me. Here it is. Hey, that worked! I'm gonna do that more often.